Am I too young to ride a Harley Davidson? Watch this video. Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. I hope you're all well. So, a question I heard a couple of weeks ago from somebody, and they said, well, I think I'm a bit too young to ride a Harley Davidson. Am I too young to ride a Harley Davidson? And I kind of overheard this, and I thought, hey, where does this come from? What is all this about? And I think it's to do with the perception of Harley Davidson riders and perhaps Indian riders, and by the same extension, a lot of BMW riders as well. That it attracts the older crowd, and especially the more expensive bikes, or the big expensive bikes from Harley Davidson, BMW, and Indian, for example. Well, let's face it, younger people can't really afford those. Well, it's very unlikely they're going to be able to afford those, and they don't have a good enough credit rating in many ways if you're going to take this on the tick. So, hey, it's only really going to appeal to older people with disposable income as well, or have a better credit score to be able to afford the leasing on it or whatever it is. But can a young person ride a Harley Davidson? Of course. Lots of younger people get into riding bikes, and when they can, they like Harley Davidson style. And guess what? There's so many used motorcycles on the market, and lots of used Harley Davidsons. Now, those used Harley Davidsons, even at the entry level, I am talking about the street bikes, for the 500s, 750s, whatever they were, and also the Sportsters, as we know, for years and years and years, they're kind of deemed or considered to be entry-level bikes. Well, you can pick those up for a couple of thousand, £2,000 or £3,000, dollars, shekels, whatever it is. And maybe you might be able to find some cheaper. It really depends on the time of year as well. Now, the little research that I have done, in the region about £3,500. Now, even for a young person, that could be quite expensive. But actually, you might be able to find one, and you might be able to work on it as well, and ride it. I mean, the Sportster sickness crowd, those guys. That's a massive thing. It's a massive thing to be involved in riding Sportsters, Harley Davidson Sportsters, of course. And a lot of these guys are young people as well. They're young guys, or young girls and girls, who like the Sportster, like Harley Davidson. They don't really even care so much about Harley Davidson. It's the Sportster, that model bike. That's the key thing here. So young people definitely can ride Harley Davidsons. Now, whether they can afford it, whether they're in a financial position to do that, whether their parents or whatever can help them out, there are lots of different variables here, of course. But just because a motorcycle brand is usually associated with older riders, that doesn't mean that younger riders can't get into it. Now, as we've seen in recent years, especially when Harley Davidson ditched the Sportster, there was that big void. Whilst they replaced it with the Knightson, Sportster S, and obviously the Pan American in terms of Revolution Max engines, and they ditched those other bikes from a few years ago, the sport bikes, those 500s and the 750s that were made in India, which weren't really well received by a lot of people in terms of numbers, big sales. I'm talking about sales numbers. And even in India, where they were being made, they weren't really selling because they were even too expensive for the local buyers. They weren't buying them; they're just too expensive. In the numbers, of course, people are always going to buy bikes, but it's in the numbers to make them a viable product to keep on selling. But they had those bikes in the past, then they stopped selling them. So the question is, well, what are young people going to buy? And are they going to now buy over 10,000, 11, 12, 13,000 pound, dollar, shekel motorcycles as their first bike, as Harley Davidson? It's very unlikely. And that's the problem. It's very unlikely that they're ever going to buy new bikes. And I remember when I was a lot younger, I was never going to buy a new bike. I could only afford used bikes, old bikes, right? They'd have to be working on them by myself at home. And that's kind of what pushed you into fixing bikes as well, because you had to do it. And that's the only way you could do it. But can young people buy and ride Harley Davidsons? Of course they can. Of course they can. If they've got the financial wares to do so, then of course they can. A lot of people now, or a lot of younger people now, may be turning away from Harley Davidson in the numbers that would have turned to Harley Davidson in the past. They're turning away from that, and they're probably turning away from motorcycling in general because of other modes of transport, the electric mobility, electric scooters, electric bicycles, that kind of thing, but also the expense that a lot of young people are faced with these days. And they're thinking a motorcycle, especially expensive motorcycle, something like Harley Davidson, is not the way to go for them. I've seen that. I speak with my lad and his friends, and you know, and young people of that age, and it's a common theme. It's a common thing that people are saying, or young people are saying. It's just too expensive to do that. But there is still a market for young people to get into Harley Davidsons. The problem is, as we know, that Harley Davidson as a company have not done anything to address that. Now, there is rumours, there's talks, and I'm making videos, and I've made videos recently, that the company might be starting to address that. Now, what does that mean for the future? What does that mean for the next couple of years of bringing cheaper, inexpensive motorcycle to the Western market to get younger people into the Harley Davidson brand? Who knows what that'll be? I mean, I'm hopeful that they will finally address this, because it may not appeal to you and I, the old salts who are riding the, you know, Harley Davidsons or BMWs or whatever it is, you know, and maybe not can afford the bigger bikes. Whether you want to spend that money or not is a totally separate issue, of course. But, you know, you've made that purchase, you've bought the big bike. So these cheap, inexpensive bikes, if they ever do materialize from Harley Davidson, well, they're not going to appeal to you, and they don't have to appeal to you. They have to appeal to the next generation, younger generation coming through. And if that happens, hey, then yes, younger people will definitely be riding more Harley Davidsons in the future. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. But can young people ride Harley Davidsons? Of course they can. Whether they can afford it, that's another matter. If you like what I do here, keep on watching the videos. Don't forget, you go to the website, RevelatorAlf.com, for all the motorcycle books, merchandise and t-shirts and clothing and everything like that. And with that, I'll catch you again. Another video coming very soon. Bye now.